what the 14th Amendment means for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Former President Donald Trump's bid to win back the White House is now threatened by two sentences added to the U.S. Constitution 155 years ago. The Colorado Supreme Court on Tuesday barred Trump from the state's ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits anyone who swore an oath to support the Constitution and then engaged in insurrection against it from holding office. It's the first time in history the provision has been used to prohibit someone from running for the presidency, and the U.S. Supreme Court is likely to have the final say over whether the ruling will stand. If it does, which many legal experts say is a long shot, it's the end of Trump's campaign because a Supreme Court decision would apply not just in Colorado, but to all states. Some conservatives have even considered using it against Vice President Kamala Harris, who raised bail money for those jailed during the violence following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. They said that also should be considered an insurrection against the Constitution. Aware that the case was very likely going to the U.S. Supreme Court, the 4-3 Colorado Supreme Court majority stayed their own order until January 4, the day before the state's primary ballots are due at the printer, or until the Supreme Court rules. Technically, the ruling applies only to Colorado, and secretaries of state elsewhere are issuing statements saying Trump remains on the ballot in their state's primary or caucus. But it could embolden other states to knock Trump off the ballot. The U.S. Supreme Court has never ruled on the meaning of Section 3. The justices can take the case as quickly as they like once Trump's campaign files its appeal, which is not expected this week. The High Court then could rule in a variety of ways, from upholding the ruling to striking it down to dodging the central questions on legal technicalities. It's always dangerous to try to predict a Supreme Court ruling. Some of the strongest advocates of using Section 3 against Trump have been prominent conservative legal theorists and lawyers who argue that courts have to follow the actual words of the Constitution. The Colorado High Court's 7 justices were all appointed by Democrats. But they split 4-3 on the ruling. Courts are very hesitant to limit voters' choices, however. There's even a term for that: the political question, whether a legal dispute is better settled by the people the voters have selected to make the laws than by unelected judges. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was written to keep former Confederates from returning to government office. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. The argument to disqualify Trump is that he clearly held an office under the United States, swore an oath and broke it in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, so he can't return to office unless 2/3 of Congress lets him back in. Finally, even if the courts concluded January 6 was an insurrection and Trump was barred, that's not their decision to make. It's a political question for Congress. The majority opinion said the Colorado Supreme Court did have jurisdiction to decide the matter, that the presidency was clearly an office in the United States, and that Trump's actions related to the Capitol attack fit the insurrection clause, in part because he urged his supporters during a rally beforehand to fight. It's worth noting that 3 of the judges on the Colorado High Court agreed with some of Trump's arguments. I have been involved in the justice system for 33 years now, and what took place here doesn't resemble anything I've seen in a courtroom, Justice Carlos Samore wrote in a scathing dissent. If President Trump committed a heinous act worthy of disqualification, he should be disqualified for the sake of protecting our hallowed democratic system, regardless of whether citizens may wish to vote for him in Colorado, Samore concluded.